Fox News host Glenn Beck said this early Tuesday about President Obama.
This president, I think, has exposed himself as a guy over and over and over again who has a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture. I don't know what it is.
Well, Fox was so concerned by that it issued a statement separating itself from it. Here's a statement from Bill Shine, the Senior Vice President of Programming for Fox News. Quote, during Fox and Friends this morning, Glenn Beck expressed a personal opinion which represented his own views, not those of the Fox News network. Well, that's interesting. They put that out. Anyway, former Congressman Kweisi Mfume is also a former president of the NAACP, and Joan Walsh is with Salon. Congressman, thank you for joining us tonight. He also called, I should say, Glenn Beck also called President Obama.
I'm not saying that he doesn't like white people. I'm saying he has a problem. This guy is, I believe, a racist. Look at the things that he has been surrounded by.
What do you make of that, Congressman?
Well, I can't even believe it, first of all. Glenn Beck owes the president an apology. He owes the American people an apology. This is an insult to our democracy, our way of life. It's divisive. It's throwing out race and trying to find a way to divide people. But at the same time, he's wise enough to know that maybe he can move his numbers up. And I don't know if he wants to overtake one of his colleagues at Fox in terms of ratings or what, but this sort of thing is terrible. And if Fox separates itself and says that's not their position, the question becomes, well, what is their position regarding the president?
Right. Well, let me go to Joan, because the congressman raises the issue that maybe this is for commercial purposes. That's my hunch.
Well, mine too.
But I also have a deeper hunch, but I never know what people are. I don't know Glenn personally. I don't know what his goals are. But I think a lot of this is aimed at telling people who are racist on the other side, hey, you're not so bad.
Right,
he's as bad as you are.
Absolutely. And
he's a racist too.
He's a racist too, but I mean, it's not too, because of course they're not racist. I mean, I wrote about this today, Chris, and I see it with both Glenn Beck and with Rush Limbaugh. There's a clear case of projection here, where these guys with really suspect racial feelings and perceptions are projecting their own hate and their own divisiveness onto a president who, as you said, had a white mother, was raised by white grandparents, and there's absolutely no evidence at all that he anything but loves white people. Obama got to where he was, in my opinion, largely because he makes white people feel like he knows we're all trying really hard, and we really like it when black people make us feel that way. So, I mean, I believe that this man, I hear the laughter, I appreciate it. You know, I believe that this man is a bridge builder. I can criticize him on this or that, but the idea that he's racist is so sick. And I just want to finally say about Fox, issuing a statement, criticizing or separating yourself from his statement, separate yourself from him, Fox News. Find another host. You're profiting from his hate and then trying to have it both ways and say, oh, we don't believe that. That's crap.
Well, you know, we've had Mr. Mfume, you're the expert. You're African-American, and you're former head of the NAACP, and you represent a district in Baltimore with a lot of African-Americans. Let me just ask you, it seems to me after 400 years in this country, African-Americans living here longer than most of us or our parents ever, grandparents ever lived here. Where does this fit in, this comment by him?
Well, it doesn't fit. I mean, hate radio, hate speech, hate groups, hate crimes really don't fit in the America that we know today. And so for this to take place, and therefore also to be silence in the ranks of many on this comment, is rather interesting. I mean, black people, white people, Latinos, Asians, people work every day to struggle, to make a living for their family, to have a nice neighborhood to live in, to try to enjoy life. This sort of thing comes along and says, nope, all that's out the window because this person is a racist and I don't like you and you should not like him. And when we start going down that slippery slope, it ends dialogue. So I would hope that persons who don't like this, and which I know are most Americans, will also pull back from the sponsors who continue to sponsor the shows that allow Mr. Beck and others to make money and to get good salaries. Just don't buy the products, don't buy the services, and pull back and send a very real message that there's no room in this America for that kind of talk.
You know, Joan, you and I have been on television together an awful lot together over the years, and I just wonder whether you believe what you said a minute ago. Do you believe you know this guy Beck enough to make that accusation, that he's really charged by racism himself, or that Rush Limbaugh is?
You know, I really...
You really believe? You
yes,
think
I
you know
do.
their motives enough to say that?
Yes, I do. I really do. I'm sorry, Chris, because I think that words have consequences, and I think that I judge people not only by their words, but what they do. And if you look at people who have a pattern, who built a career out of dividing people, and who built a career out of often, not just Obama, but finding ways to degrade and diminish African Americans and African American leaders, I don't care what's in their hearts. To be honest with you, they can tell themselves they're not racist. They can tell me they have black friends. I don't care. It's racist to consistently make your living on the backs of black people. And you know, you brought up 400 years, and let's consider this an intellectual show where we can talk history. I truly believe that this assault on Obama is linked to what you referred to earlier with his health care numbers dropping, and I will tell you why. In the 230-year history of this country, the reason we have never developed a social democratic base the way they have in Europe, we're the only Western country without some kind of universal health care, Chris. There's a reason, and it is because corporate interests have divided the American people by race and ethnicity. The Irish from the blacks, the Germans from the German Jews. It goes back to the 1700s. It's been very smart. It's been very effective, and people have voted against their self-interest to keep some other group down, and therefore we don't have the basic things that other countries take for granted in terms of a social infrastructure. That's what they're doing again. They want to defeat health care. They want to defeat his whole agenda by dividing us on racial lines. I don't think it's going to work. I really don't, but that's what's happening.
Do you believe this grand theory, Congressman, that Joan just put out there, that there's some grand sort of almost a Marxist analysis where you can say that the corporate world's done this to us?
I'm not a Marxist. No, but
it's an analysis, an economic analysis of human behavior. Yeah, it is an economic analysis of human behavior. I think it's more complicated. I think we have tribalist tendencies. We've got to overcome them. I don't think the corporate world created those tribalist tendencies. I think people just got to get beyond them.
You're right.
Chris, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't think Humpty Dumpty just fell. I think he was pushed. And I think there are people who are in this country deliberately pushing buttons to try to hold back the progress that people are making in this country as one nation. And when you push those buttons, as Mr. Glenn Beck did and so many others, it causes the progress to slow down. As I said before, this is anti-American, and most of all, it's insulting to the democracy that people work day in and day out to preserve.
Let's listen to him again. Let's listen to at least a couple of the bites again, if we can run them now so people know what he said and we're not getting beyond Glenn Beck and his thinking here, if you will.
You can't sit in a pew with Jeremiah Wright for 20 years and not hear some of that stuff and not have it wash over. What kind of president of the United States immediately jumps on the police? Just like what kind of president would ever say, oh, well, yeah, well, he's black. Of course he was breaking into the house. You'd never do that. You'd never do that. Right. He wanted to address this. Now they're going to have a beer? That's obscene.
Well, that's the thought. He's obviously embellishing this, Congressman. He's getting into this is some sort of use of the word racist. Racist in common parlance means you don't like the other race. If you're white, you don't like black. If you're black, you don't like white. But it really means a sense of racial superiority. That's what racist means. One race should dominate the other. It's historically meant white people dominating blacks. Right. What do you think he means by this idea that Barack Obama is a racist? That blacks should rule the world and whites should be subservient, or that blacks, he just doesn't like white people? What meaning can you ascribe to this fella, this broadcaster?
I mean, aside from the fact that he's laughable, he's also just a great big problem in the terms of the road of progress. You know, Chris, I was born at night. I just wasn't born last night. I served under Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton. Every president says something in the heat of the moment that they back off from. And they say, well, you know, I may have misspoken. That's normal. Yeah. It's going to happen. It's going to always happen. But for him to take this and to play it in such a way to suggest, well, you know, you got to watch out because these black people are getting ready to take over, that is offensive.
Let me ask you, Joan, about this question of the birthers. You and I have talked about it before.
Yes.
I have thought there's an attempt by some people, not the Republican Party per se, but people on the far right, who have tried to delegitimize our election last November. They can't live with the fact that Barack Obama won, so they're trying to say basically he wasn't a legitimate American, therefore it wasn't a legitimate election, therefore our democracy almost needs a new election. And this guy, by the way, needs to be picked up and taken out by INS, basically. No, really, that's what you got. If you follow their logic to the extent that it exists, he ought to be picked up because he doesn't have a green card.
Lou Dobbs
because he
came very
wasn't
close
born
to
here
that,
and
yeah.
he never went through naturalization. I mean, if you listen to them as if they were logical, this is what they're saying.
You follow,
is this of a
right.
piece? Is this of a piece?
I think
is
it's
Beck
related.
part of that to de-Americanize the guy?
I do. I think it's related. It's all an attempt to dehumanize him and to delegitimize him in a very deep way. And it does go back. I mean, you led this segment by talking about Sarah Palin. He's palling around with terrorists. It goes back to the Palin campaign. I will not say the McCain campaign because John McCain did come out and tell people he's not a Muslim. He's a good American family man, and I really value that moment because it's been way too rare in the last 6 to 8 months. We need more of it. We're not hearing enough of it from Republicans. Michael Steele, finally today, Michael Steele did make a statement and say, I believe the president is a citizen and he's a legitimate president and I want these people to stop. But it's just been far too slow in coming.
Yeah, it's getting worse. And by the way, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has taken heat from the South down there from some of the right for daring to vote for a Supreme Court nominee of the other party. It's unbelievable. It's getting very heated.
Yes.
Congressman, thank you very much for joining
Party. It's been taken over by the extremists. And the moderate Republicans need to speak up and say something.
Well, let's wait and see if they do it, if there are any left.